The following program is rated TVMA. This program contains topics and viewpoints from metaphysical professionals. Topics, conversations, insights, and experiences are meant for a mature adult audience and may not be suitable for younger viewers. All insights, experiences, and conversations contained in this show are meant as informational. Always consult either legal or medical professionals when needed. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Terra Turas, the Metaphysical Roundtable. 5 professional readers coming together, including Brenda Lynn, Heather Lynn, Jamie Gibson, Reverend Pat Beers, Michael, and most importantly, you, the audience. Walk with us as we cover different aspects of the metaphysical and spiritual sides of life. Bring together our insight, experience, and discussion to a roundtable event. And now, here is tonight's host.
Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. Welcome to Terra Turas, our diverse medical roundtable that comes to you every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central. So I just want to welcome everybody. I want to introduce everybody. We have Michael, and we have Jamie Gibson, and we have Heather Lynn, and we have Reverend Pat Beers. Tonight, we are going to be talking to Reverend Pat Beers. She is on what we affectionately refer to as the hot seat. So we are going to be asking her some questions. We'll all have an opportunity to ask her about her life and her metaphysical life and her work experience. And I'm really looking forward to it. After that, we are going to continue our discussion from the week before last, which was that initial gut feeling, that gut intuition, and what you do with it, and how it sort of turns into a psychic ability. And so hopefully you enjoyed our little show last week where we all talked about gratitude. For Thanksgiving month, we decided to do a pre-recorded show, and I listened to everybody. And I learned some things about you, Pat, during that little gratitude segment that you did that I didn't know about you. So I'm sorry?
I did good.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to hearing more. So I think I'm just going to turn it over to you to just talk about yourself, and then we'll open it up for question and answer. So let us know who you are.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about my biography, I guess. I was adopted within the family when I was 10 days old. I'm the only one, I'm 7 of 8. I'm the only one born in the hospital. And I had a near death at age 6 when my appendix almost ruptured, and a deceased uncle came to me. And my paternal grandmother's Delaware Indian, and my adopted mom was actually my cousin. She could see spirit. They would talk to her, but she couldn't understand what they were saying. So here I am, this cute little kid, sitting. The family was so big that, by the time we came along, my siblings were 14 years older than me, the oldest one. So she's married and had family in front. And they'd put 2 sawhorses and a door on it, put a sheet on it, and called that our table. So we're sitting there having dinner, and the next thing I know, here's my favorite uncle who had passed away, comes in, does the noggin noogie, calls me buckshot like he always did. And I turned around, and my adopted mom smacking me across the face, going, "That's not funny. You stop that right now." Okay. Yeah, didn't know I was weird till I was 16. I thought everybody did what we do. And it's as much instinct with us as it is anything else. And I had friends that their parents wouldn't let me be friends anymore because I'm telling them stuff their family didn't want them to know. I have no idea what it was, but things like that. And then I had a second near death at age 31. And after that, there was no turning it off anymore. It was just kind of very interesting. I've been watching the new Mama Medium. The Long Island Medium used to drive me crazy because we all get that same stuff, but we don't know if these people passed 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days, or 20 years ago, when they're bugging the living daylights out of us. And she's driving me crazy because, like, spirit will follow me around in a grocery store, and I would walk up to you and go, "Oh, I am so happy to see you." And then, depending on whether the message was from a male or a female, I would say, "I haven't seen you in so long, and I was just thinking about either a man or a woman," and I would tell them the message. And if they looked at me funny, I would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You are my friend Tweet's neighbor, aren't you?" Now, Tweet left Akron 30 plus years ago. And they go, "No." And I go, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Please excuse the intrusion." But Spirit's leaving me alone. I've left the message. I can go on and finish my shopping now. And this new Mama Medium just really cracks me up because she's younger than I am. She's probably you guys' age. And she'll just walk right up to him and say, "May I give you a message? You have Spirit there." But it's been interesting. My poor husband, we were married, we may as well say 41 years. I knew him 43. Died of pancreatic cancer 10 years ago in February. And our whole married life, it would drive him nuts that I would tell him things. He'd go, "Well, that's just somebody in the bridge group telling you what's going on at work," because he worked a good year. And I go, "No, haven't talked to anybody. We only play once a month. I haven't seen him yet." So before he passes in September, he starts seeing Spirit. And our children now are 44 and 47, but they were 35 and 38 when he passed. And they come to me and go, "Mom," and I go, "What?" And they go, "Cancer's affecting Dad's brain. It has to be." And I said, "Why?" "Well, he's talking about dead relatives. He's talking about angels." I said, and it only took me 43 years to convince him that I am not crazy. So that's about it, And both our children have it. Our daughter's great with it. Our son goes, "Leave me alone." He lived in New Orleans for 8 to 10 years. He rode out Katrina in the Renaissance Arts Hotel. And when he first went down there to the big Marriott, he would call me and go, "Ma, yes, honey, what's wrong?" "Tell him leave me alone." Well, he could see Spirit and he could hear them, and he didn't want to. And of course, the hotels, there's a whole city underneath the hotel. So Spirit knew he could see them. And I'd say, "Just tell him you're busy. You don't have time to talk to him right now. You'll talk to him later." And they finally then left him alone. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Do you have any stories about how your there are a few things that I feel on a psychic level, actually, like you must have a story with you and your husband. Like how did he come to accept it? How did that go?
I think I wore it down. He was a German analytical Scorpio master's degree chemist in organic chemistry. I'm a coal miner's kid from Morgantown, West Virginia. So, you want to talk about closed and analytical and all that. And he'd just say, whatever. And he would ask me questions. I'm a retired realtor and broker. I did that for 28 years. And my computer was in the family room, when we had just the desktops. And I would be working on that for real estate. And he would start asking me questions. Well, as long as I didn't look at him, everything was cool. But if I looked at him, you just saw that window shade come down, man. He shut up and wouldn't say another word. It had to be osmosis. And with both our kids, the hardest time I think he ever had was when 10 days before first grade, our son broke both his arms at the same time. He fell from the top of one of those big sliding boards. A kid pushed him off. The night before, I had the same dream 3 times. I saw this man carrying our son. My husband was 6 foot tall. I saw this man carrying our son. He had on, remember those little gold rimmed glasses, the little tiny ones? He had those on. He had on a white t-shirt. His t-shirt sleeves were rolled up, and he was my husband's height. And he had it. Now I'm talking, it was 1980. And so men didn't, if you're going to a picnic, a man wore a t-shirt. That was kind of, they don't worry about polo shirts, not. And I kept waking up screaming because this man's carrying our son. His arms are across his chest. His head's back. I can't tell if he's alive or dead. And he said, "You and your damn dreams, just shut up and go to sleep." And I did. So I didn't wear my glasses the next day. I didn't wear my contacts. If it was more than 5 feet away, it was going to be a blur. Our daughter was 9. We go to the picnic and we're there maybe an hour and a half. And our daughter starts tugging on my sleeve. Mommy, 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 what? Mommy and daddy are talking, honey. Just a minute. But mommy, this man's carrying Paul. Now my husband, I looked at him and I said, go ahead, tell me he's your height. He's got a white t-shirt on, his t-shirt sleeves are rolled up. He's got little gold rimmed glasses and his hair's all slicked back. Well, he couldn't see the distance anyway, so it took him a few minutes. He goes, I ain't telling you nothing. So that was one of them. That was the funniest one because, oh, he was mad at me for that. But it's just like, it's just instinct. First it's that mom thing, and then we've got this other thing going on top of it. So, yeah. But things would happen.
And it's hard to know what to do with it too when you're getting stuff like that, and who to talk to. That's very interesting that your husband was so linear and like a linear type person, and this work is so creative and so right-brained, but you just sometimes it just works.
It worked. And we had, when our son was about 9-10 years old, I can't remember, it wasn't Boy Scouts, it was something else, Indian Guides maybe, but my husband and son belonged to it. And I was very active in the community, always very active in the community. I volunteered at the school. We had a community council. We put on a festival every year. And Paul came home crying one day after the meeting. And I said, honey, what's wrong? And he said, Mommy, that man said, you can't be my mommy because he knows daddy, and daddy would never marry anybody like you.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And so the other thing that I had a feeling about is that something I relate to as well is, do you get a lot of clients or referrals to counsel people who are in grief? Does that happen with you a lot? You're very good with people in grief, I feel.
A lot. And if you watch the video, you heard me say my prayer in the morning and my prayer in the evening is, I thank Mother, Father, God for my home, my health, my family, my friends, and my pets. And I thank them for allowing me to give people the information they need to make the decisions they need to make. People often want us to make their decisions, and I won't. I just put it back on them. And I read for a lot of people, unfortunately, drug overdoses, suicide, sometimes murder, sometimes accidents. And just to be able to see the relief there. Just a couple months ago, we were down in Marietta at a fair, and a lady brought her husband to me, skeptic. Oh my gosh. Their daughter was only 21 years old. She'd been in a severe, terrible car accident. She was on life support. And he had to make the decision. And he was so afraid that she was mad at him and she wouldn't understand. Now, I know nothing. When you sit down at my table, I do what's called psychometry. I hold on to something that belongs to you or the person you want to know about, and I take the energy from that. And I just started talking immediately about this beautiful young woman with light brown, almost blonde hair and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going on. And he's crying. And his wife's holding his hand. And he looked at her and he said, you know her, don't you? And she said, honey, I never saw her before in my life. But to be able to tell him the information he wanted even before he could ask a question just gave him such peace. And that's a feeling you can't buy. It's a feeling you can't buy.
No. Yeah. And to help somebody, to explain to them maybe why they don't need to carry that guilt. I think that's one of the most healing things. And to acknowledge that, in a reading. That's awesome.
I think the thing that probably helped him was the most, and a very dear friend of mine's nephew was killed in a train accident, and explained to him that she was with her grandparents. She didn't know about the car accident because they took her out of her body just as it was happening.
Right.
She felt He said, that's just the vessel. We're all wearing this coat called a body. And when we leave this earth and we go back to the light, we're just pure energy. And that really, she called me 2 or 3 days later and she said, you have no idea. She said, it's been 5 years and for the first time my husband can talk about this and not feel guilty. I think that's pretty cool.
That's an amazing story. Thank you. And so I want to open it up for others to ask questions. So I'm thinking we should start with Heather. What do you have? What do you want to know about Pat? Hi, I think you're muted. You're muted, Heather. Ta-da!
Hey, I'm here. Hey, guys.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Pat, so I loved your gratitude video. I could just feel your heart, and I really did learn a lot about you in that video, and it was at each of you. But for whatever reason, yours really touched me. So thank you for sharing that beautiful truth with us. Um, Gosh, questions. I really don't have any specific questions. How did you fine tune your skills? Because it's been a pleasure getting to know you in this short time. And every time I hear you talk, it just adds to the layers. And I think I feel it. I don't know. You give me all the feels. So, how did you really refine your skills?
One word, trust. You just have to ask your angels and guides. And then, does this feel right? Not what my head's thinking. Does it feel right in my solar plexus? And sometimes, you know how it is. You'll tell somebody something and it's like, oh, you're totally wrong. Okay, I can only tell you what I'm seeing, hearing, feeling, whatever. And you just have to trust. I mean, it just comes down to that. You trust that the angels and God, Mother, Father, God's with you. And I tell them all the time, don't tell me anything I can't do something about. Because if there's a mudslide in Africa or a boat sinking in China and you get that feeling, it's like, oh, I just start praying for the highest and best of everybody involved. That's all we can do. You know, those gut instincts that you have as a mom, you just know when they're doing something.
Yes.
Same thing, just that trust.
Yeah, you take me back to the basics with that stuff, Pat. That I remember when I first started saying, okay, yes, I will do this work, but y'all need to give me only stuff I can do something about. I remember that prayer. Yeah, it was critical it was like my contract I was making with them, to do this work. It's like, okay, but I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. So, yeah.
It'll drive you crazy if you don't set some boundaries. It's like, we were at a haunted hotel in Conneaut, Pennsylvania, and the other my friends will go, I can't sleep. I said, I tell them, I will talk to you all day tomorrow, but tonight I need my rest because there are people that want my help, and I can't help them if I haven't slept. And they're very respectful most of the time.
Yes. Yep. That's what I found too. Yeah. That's similar for me. It's the same kind of thing.
Can I tell you guys another funny story? You appreciate
Yes, please.
Why they're reminding me of this. My husband passed on February 12th. I put a 21, almost 22-year-old cat down June 15th, and I broke both my ankles June 23rd. On the steps that I've lived in this house 35 years, coming in from my garage. And my husband hated cats, was allergic to them, and this cat would come and lay on his stomach for 2 years. And as long as he didn't touch his face after he petted her, he's great. But if he touched his face, he'd sneeze, his eyes was well shut. She'd get mad at him, go up in our bed, go under his blankets on his side, sleep on his pillow. He'd come to bed, he'd start sneezing. I'd say, flip the pillow over, honey. Or I'd change the pillowcase for him. So she had a tumor in her eye when she was 19 and they wanted to put her down. And he said, no. He used a little profanity. We're going to toast together because he wanted to be cremated. So they're together in their own jar downstairs. Okay. I went to Edwin Shaw, which was a sanitarium. It was used for the mentally ill. It was used for all kinds of stuff. And they had closed off the entire third floor. You couldn't get up there. They cinder blocked the entrances, and they stopped the elevator from going up there. Well, I'm in my room, and there's a few nurses that would not come in the room at night because they just got the hair stood up on their neck. They got the chills. They would not come in. Well, there was this guy, I named him Clyde. I don't know what his name was, but the offices used to be above my room, okay? You remember the old metal office chairs and the metal file cabinets? Yeah. I'd hear those doors all night long. And I'm in some severe pain here, buddy. I'd hear the chair creak. I'd hear these heavy footsteps across the wooden floor. And I said, if you don't knock it off, I'm going to send you to the light. He's like, well, who do you think you are? And I said, the one that's going to send you to the light if you don't knock it off. two of the older nurses, and they were a hoot. They weren't that old. I'm in my early 60s, and one of them was retired and came back because she couldn't stand being cute. No bigger than a minute, 5 foot tall, maybe weighed 100 pounds. She's, I'm going day shift. I can't take this anymore. She comes to day shift, and so I made the white light, and I told him if he didn't settle down, I was going to invite him to leave. He was just going to go there. And he said, you can't do that to me. So I just made the light come a little bit closer to him and said, for his highest and best, if this is for his highest and best, I ask that you help him to go into the light. He saw that. He settled down. He did not do a thing at night anymore, but he would do it during the day. Now, these poor nurses that used to get terrified to come in there at night are now working days, and it's happening to them during the day. It was just too funny. They go, what did you do? I didn't do anything. Oh, I have friends who know you. I know you did something. It was just too funny. They just tore the place down. A friend of mine lives very close to there, and her husband went out and took pictures, and you see all these white orbs coming out of this brick building that they tore down. It had been there since the 30s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. That's funny.
I thought it was hysterical.
I'm going to do that one day when I can't sleep. I'm going to say, I'm going to send you.
Sometimes they come because they want to leave, and they come to us in nighttime because that's when we're most relaxed and they can get through.
Right.
You know?
Right. Right. That's awesome. So, Jamie.
Yes.
What do you have for Pat?
How are you doing, Pat?
Doing okay. I love this weather. It's 25 here today, a couple inches of snow on the ground. Good old Arthur came to visit my back and hasn't chosen to leave. So get cold, stay colder, get warm, and stay warm, but stop the show.
I was curious because you've been doing this. The growth of metaphysics in the country or in the world has moved and changed. And I was just curious, your perspective of when things really kind of took off more, because I feel like it was kind of more in the shadows for a long, long time. And then it feels like currently it's every day. You know, people are totally fine with talking about it now, but I know there was a time that they weren't.
Oh, yeah. Lots of times. I would get messages, good examples down in Cincinnati at an Ohio Realtor meeting, and I'm sitting next to a lady and Spirit showing me that her daughter's got throat cancer, thyroid cancer. And Ohio seems to be the capital for that. And I didn't even know her very well. And her name was Polly. And I said, I didn't know she had a daughter. I said, Polly, how's your daughter doing? I said, last time I saw you, you said she had a sore throat that wouldn't go away. I didn't know that. And she looked at me, she said, oh, that's right. Yeah, that was going on in January and this is May. And she said, she just won't go. I said, you probably should really get her to go and check that. I said, excuse me, my mom had a goiter on her thyroid. And I said, maybe something like that. You never know. She called me about a month later and said, my daughter has thyroid cancer. And I caught it in time. How did you know that? Because you keep those careers separate. Nobody knew for a long time. I said, it was just a feeling I had. And then later I thought, because when I was younger, literally, I told you until I was 16, I thought everybody knew what I knew. Yeah. And then I had to shut it down because when you go into a store or someplace and you feel like you're in the middle of a basketball court and all the spirits yelling at you because they want you to give messages and blah, blah, blah. And I can't tell them. And I had a second near death at 31, and that's when it really took off. I went into cardiac arrest. Went in for a surgery and went into cardiac arrest. I got to spend 5 days in the heart unit. I was 31 and weighed 135 pounds and had blonde hair. I was a hit of the floor. Woke up one night and had a lady in her 80s, very tiny, very petite, sitting on my chest, beating on me because I was having an affair with her dead husband. And she knew it. And it just... You all know what it's like growing up with this kind of thing. Who do you talk to? I couldn't talk to my family about it because they thought I was crazy. I'm the only one out of 8 that does this. I have been able to bring my one sister a lot of relief because her daughter had been on drugs, got all straightened out, and died of the prescription medication they put her on. I wouldn't have known Amanda if I ran into her on the street. She's 22 years old. I hadn't seen her since she was 12. The kids get their life. And I'm just so happy now that kids can talk to people about it. It's acceptable. They don't have to go hide. You know, I'm sure you did the same thing. I had the craziest dream about you the other night, and that's how I would deliver my messages. Little white lie, God, little white lie.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to keep the professional world different from this world a lot of times. I used to straddle that a lot. I understand that one.
Well, once they found out about that, then I did fundraisers because we had a gal in Ohio running for national president. And then I was acceptable because I had validation from Polly and they needed money. So now it's okay. And no, it never helped me in my career. The only time, if someone said to me, don't worry, Pat, we're going to buy a house from you, I'd look at them and say, no, you won't. Like, what do you mean? Either someone in your family is going to offer you a deal you can't pass up. My son's best friend called. There was a house very near me. The agent was from Canton. He was from out of this market. It was underpriced, about $30,000. I said, Scott, you go write a contract and you write it now. But Ms. Beers, no, Scott, you go. Because if he waited for me, the house would have been gone. You know, so it's like, yeah, that kind of stuff. And it was really fun too to go into houses where I knew someone had committed suicide or someone had been murdered, or, you know, and it could have happened in the early 20s or something, you know, maybe it was attached to the land, but you couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
You know? Crazy.
That made it fun, I'm sure. I mean,
it did sometimes. It really did. I'd go in and go, I'm not going in that bed. That's okay. My legs bother me, guys. I'm not going downstairs today.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, Michael and Pat have quite a history. So I'm just going to hang back and enjoy this conversation because I'm sure it's going to get real interesting.
Yeah, Michael.
I've known Pat. I've known Pat for quite a while. She's the family member that just doesn't live right close to our house, you know. But she comes over. We have dinner, and she and I have traveled to a lot of psychic fairs. She introduced me to the local fairs and a lot of the local readers. So I know quite a bit about her. Some of it I won't repeat in public. Otherwise, she'd probably smack me.
That's a two-way street there, friend.
Yeah, I know. That's why I mind.
Come on, you two.
That's why I mind my P's and Q's. There's something that I don't think that I've ever asked before.
Okay.
How, and this is going to take you back probably quite a few years. I know that you have a very firm faith in God, but I also know that you have firm faith in spirituality, as well as other things in life. We'll put it that way. When you were younger, I know at some point, because I believe we've all had them, you probably had a crisis of faith. What is it that you believe in versus what you are doing? How did you reconcile that?
Again, I think it was trust. When I was 12 and a half, I had to do a family tree for civics class, which they don't teach anymore. And the school that it was junior high school, the school that I went to had my sister, who's 12 and a half years older than I am. She's second oldest. She's now deceased. Went to live with the same family. Our father was alcoholic, and they were farmers, and they were very poor. And we did this family tree, and I had a teacher named Mrs. Swisher, who was probably in her mid to late 60s, and she did have some issues. She told 3 of us in that class that we were adopted. This is not your family name. I had your sister in school. She didn't go by this name. She went by this name. Now, if you can imagine, I'm 12 and a half. That hormones are starting to, and the principal knew me. Several teachers knew me. And I went to the principal's office. The phys ed teacher came and he said, Patty, I'm so sorry. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I mean, where do you belong? Your real family didn't want you. And the adoptive family didn't love you enough to tell you. And my sister was, I don't know if my sister had gone to DC yet then or not. because she went to DC again. She would have been 24, 25. She's probably in DC by then. My whole world just went because everybody lied to me. We went to visit the family farm in Washington, PA every weekend because my grandmother was Delaware Indian. She's 90 some years old. And the woman I grew up calling grandma was actually my aunt. And so we would go out there at least once a month. And sometimes the kids would tell me, "You're our little sister." Well, if I ask about it, all that happened was we all got in trouble. So you learn not to do that. That was a tough time for me between, I would say, 12 and a half and 16. I mean, I just like, if there's a God, why did this happen to me? If you love me, how could you let this happen to me? My poor sister, I must have driven her crazy because she was like my mom, really, more than our adopted mom was. And I could pick up mice by the tail out in the yard and hold them, and they'd just hang there. Neighborhood cats would come to me all chewed up. I put iodine on them, fix them. My father would go, "You're going to get big. You're going to get sick." And my sister would say, "Stop doing that." And I go, "Stop doing what?" And then, when I'd ask her about God and Jesus, and I'd say, "Well, if the devil's so bad, why doesn't he just chain him up down in hell? How can he hurt us like this? How can this happen to me?" And my sister would say, "It's just the way it is, honey. It's just the way, you just have to trust you're going to be okay." And so that's when I just started trusting in the unknown.
Because I know that in my travels and working with you and watching people's reaction to how you read, and they look and they see your title, Reverend, they question, how can you be a pastor of any nature and yet profess as a psychic or a medium? Some people have a real hard time with that. And I've watched you explain to them, or try to. The people that want to listen, they come to a quick understanding. The people that don't, I don't believe they ever will. No. They're set in their fashion or their theology, which is perfectly fine. But it's been interesting to me. I never asked how you reconciled that. The second question that I have: how the hell do you manage to travel as much as you do?
I don't clean house.
Now, ladies, I'll tell you, this is a lady. She had, and I believe you now have like another Honda CRV, right?
Yeah. I only put 25,000 miles on it in a year and 2 months.
Her first one, she ran the wheels off the damn thing. I kid you not. She was everywhere. I would call her during the week, and she may or may not be home. And then I would call her on a weekend, and she was never home. Whether she was in Southern Ohio, Northern Ohio, Indiana, New York, Virginia, I mean, she was all over the place. And it's just, how did you manage over all of these years to keep that energy level up to accomplish that much?
Same way you all do. When you're helping someone, I get upset with my friends who are readers. Say, "Oh, I just can't take, I get so tired." I thank the good Lord and the universe for allowing me to be a conduit. I'm not the source of the information. I'm just the voice box that's coming through. And I get energized. If I've been any place at a party or a psychic fair, it takes me an hour to come back into. We walk 1 foot in each world all the time. And it just.
I think we lost Pat for a moment.
Yep. I think we did. Oh, there she is. No?
Nope, she's sitting there in frozen space.
Yeah.
That might have been her phone ringing.
Yeah.
There you are.
I know, my phone went crazy. My phone was ringing. I said my Honda was a 2004 CRV, and it had 329,329 miles on it. And I happen to live in a county where you don't have to replace the catalytic converter. And had my mechanic told me that, it will probably still be running.
Wow.
I know that she had that vehicle going everywhere. Now, to tell you about her sense of humor, just a part. I'm not getting in. We're not getting into that right now. We went to, oh my God, Chesterfield in Indiana.
Spiritualist camp. You got to go, guys.
Yeah.
Chesterfield, Indiana.
And you've taught at Chesterfield before, have you not?
Now, I attended a lot of classes there, and I could get my minister's license through them if I chose to go and, sit for the interview, but I don't need it. I have.
Okay. While we were driving, because I rode with her, I drove over to her house because she's further west than I am, and hopped in her CRV, packed everything up, and I had my reading board and everything. Off we went. And I see that she has this wonderful GPS, so I know that we're not going to get lost. But it does not talk English. It moos at people. The turn is coming up, and all you hear is, "Mrrr." I'm like, what the hell is that?
I had it set so it would moo.
I flipped out the first time that I heard it. I'm like, okay, this just can't be right. And I heard it again. I just looked at her. I'm like, are you serious? She goes, yeah. Now,
We cry. Yeah, we cry entirely too much. People say, how can you laugh? I said, I've cried rivers in my life. I'm done with that. I'm like Irma Bomback. The grass is always greener over the septic tank, or the life is a bowl of cherries, And it really upsets people sometimes.
The last question that I have, you are one of the few remaining pastors in your particular branch of theology, correct?
The church that we originally founded is no more. And I'm with, Joseph Cecil, which you wouldn't know, but anyway, he's passed also. It's gone through like five people since I became licensed with him about 40 some years ago. Yes, a spiritualist church.
That one grabbed my attention when you told me about that. I was just, because anybody can go and see that people have a reverend before them, before their name, and it's alphabet soup for them because they went online to whatever. Yeah, quite a few of them. But Pat's is the honest to God real thing. She didn't go online somewhere to do this. She actually gets out and she does. When was the last time you did a wedding?
I haven't done. I'm supposed to do one this summer. I haven't. I was supposed to do one this year, but I haven't done it yet. I've officiated 38 of them, so I, probably a year ago, April. And I did my first lesbian wedding a couple years. That's a story too. Gal at the post office. She has a crew cut, and I mean, I never knew. Just kind of, she has a daughter, so I just never, try and think about. And I'm getting my meal, and she comes out. She says, "I need to talk to you in the lobby." And I said, "Okay, what did I do now?" She comes out and she puts her elbow up on the counter. And she says, "I see some of your meal comes addressed to Reverend Pat Beers. What the heck does that mean?" And I said, "Well, the state of Ohio seems to think it's okay for me to officiate weddings, funerals, memorials, whatever." Okay. Now, I've known her probably 15, 20 years, and she goes, "Would you marry me?" And without even thinking, I go, "Oh, Amy, I love you, but you're not my type, honey. I would have gone through a hole in the floor the size of the dime." "No, not me, Brandy and I." I said, "Sure."
Oh, shit. Yeah, I can imagine. Last question that I'll ask her right now. Do you find it difficult being a reader, being a psychic, being a medium? Do you find it difficult more so than normal when you do funerals? Or do you find that it makes it easier and more comforting for people?
My first funeral I did, I officiated a wedding for a friend of my son's. I'm talking 30 years ago or better. All the kids' friends call me Mom Pat. I go to the Mom Pat, Mom Beers. And people are looking at me like, "How many kids do you have?" Anyway. And I officiated his wedding. And her father, this was second marriage for both. They'd both been married at the courthouse before. So I'm officiating this wedding, and her father was a character. He was over 6 foot tall, big guy, but he was in his late 70s, early 80s. He'd had surgery on both his feet because of diabetes. He's sitting in the front row, and I'm trying to officiate this wedding. He's blowing me kisses, telling me he loves me, I'm beautiful, and I'm trying to ignore him. I use the Unity Handbook and do my thing. He passed not quite 2 weeks later. And Brett calls me up and goes, Mom, Pat. And I said, hi, honey, how are you? You still married? And he says, yeah. But he says, remember Kenny? And I said, how could I forget Kenny? And his wife came over and apologized. She said, he's just like this all the time. I said, it's okay. It's fine. I wasn't worried. But well, Kenny passed away and we promised him you'd do his funeral. I said, you would? I said, I do weddings. I do baby baptisms. Don't talk to me about that. But Mom, Pat, he loved you. You know how much he loved you. We promised him. So if you've never heard of the Edeljord Museum, it's in Indianapolis. It's the largest private collection of Native American artifacts. Well, her brother happened to work for those people, and I love that place. So I always meet with the family, and I get as much history as I can. And I went there. I want to talk about this person like I know them, and to some degree, I do know them. And he was cremated, and they were doing a lot of construction on our Route 8, our 4-lane highway north. I got there an hour early because I was scared death was going to be late. And there's another car in front of me. Now, I've not done another funeral, so I'm like, oh my gosh. So got the ceremony, everything all together, and there's this little tiny hole because they're bringing this little tiny. There's a car in front of me, and you know what a swallow looks like? They have the very pointy wings. And the swallow comes and circles the grave 3 times. It goes down, dips into it, and goes up, disappears. And I'm like, wow. And I'm watching the car in front of me, and this lady's got her head out the window going, you know where to go. And he asked me to read the "Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not here. I'm just asleep." Okay, you know how that goes. There were several of us there. The hearse was 45 minutes late. So they come with the remains, and I'm doing this. And I mean, I'm feeling so bad for Brett that only been married a few weeks and whatever. If I said I am the sunlight glint on grain, the sun comes out. If I say I am the winds that blow, the wind starts blowing. It was like I was in the Wizard of Oz, you know how he had all that. And by the time I'm to the last sentence, I'm crying. They're all coming comforting me. And they said, thank you, Pat, thank you. And I said, if he wasn't dead, I'd kill him. He promised us that he would let us know he was okay. And he said he was going to put on a show, and by golly, he did. And I said, Brett, I'm going to bring you ever love a little neck. But yeah. So yeah, it's just everything that if you've not read it, read it. It's author unknown, and it's been attributed to Native Americans. But everything that it said that started happening freaked me out.
Wow.
But I just know that there's a higher power. I've always known there was a higher power.
Awesome.
Whatever. Can I tell you another funny story? As a realtor,
yes.
I had an office in our insurance man's basement. And he wasn't going to rent me space because he needed to talk to my husband. We were some of his first customers. And I said, Chuck, Roger's name's not going to be on that check that I give you every month. It's going to be my name. And he said, okay. So I'm there one night. It's 10:30 at night, and I'm working. And I came up to go home, and there was a lovely black minister from Canton, Ohio. Cute, short, pudgy, just wanted to hug him, you know. Young woman. Yes, sir. Are you married? Yes, sir. How long? 30-some years at that point. What are you doing here? Well, I have a real estate company and I rent space down here. But young lady, the Bible says that you should be home with your husband. And Chuck goes, oh. His wife's name's Pat also. People always thought we were having an affair when he talked about his Patty. It was just a running joke. And I said, well, may I ask you a question? And he said, sure. And I said, well, we talking about the Bible before the council at Nicaea, the Torah, the Quran, the King James Version, or the Catholic version? And Chuck goes, oh. He just wanted to go in. Yeah. You know, he talked to that man for almost 2.5 hours. He stood up, shook my hand, gave me a hug, and said, young woman, you have certainly opened my eyes. And that's the same way when people say, oh, you're psychic, that's horrible. And I go, oh, wow, I thought there were prophets in the Bible. Am I wrong about that? Is there something in the Bible about that? And it either shuts them up or it makes them really angry, and they go away, and I start smiling. Yes, I'm rotten. And I tell my children it's tough raising parents these days. They worried me for years. It's my turn.
That's awesome. I love that story. And we have something in common there, Pat, because I too have studied religious history. When Michael asked you the question about, so how did you reconcile this, you know, and how was your faith challenged? I really related to that. And and that was one of the things that I did, was I studied the history, and I went way deep and looked at different versions of things. And that was hugely how I reconciled it. And I thought of that. And then you had that story. So that is awesome. Thank you. Thank you for being a part of Terra Turas. I, for one, am thrilled to have you as part of this awesome, diverse panel. And we are going to take, I think it's about a 3-minute break, and we'll be right back. And welcome back. So for the second half of our show, we are going to talk about that gut feeling that you get, you know, when you know something is about to go either really well or not so well. And we touched on that the week before last. You know, it was Mike who thought of this topic when we did the hot seat the week before last. And I thought, oh, but we need to continue that conversation because this is one of my favorite topics. It's how I learned, you know, what was going on with me when I started really practicing, when I really woke up back when. And I used to teach a workshop called Co-Creating with the Divine. This This is back in 2006 or 2007 that I started it. And my guidance gave me something when I was waking up, and it has since morphed into something different, like I've been able to grow with it. So one thing, I think we're going to be showing that here while I'm describing it. One thing I would say is that, a lot of my language has changed since I wrote this. Um, we have, it's like we have this gut intuition, and things come into your solar plexus, like we talked about. Your solar plexus is right at your gut, and we usually get a feeling, and that feeling travels. It can travel in the body. It can travel into the mind and give us ideas. It can give us physical feelings. It can give us emotional feelings. A lot of times it's like the beginning, the navigation of when we first get that intuitive hit. And so when I was beginning and helping others with their beginnings, I got this called Keep It Simple Self. And for short, we would call it KISS. So when we would talk about things through the workshop, we would all say, okay, kiss it. So that means get the keep it simple self, feel it come into the gut and go through the body. And what are you learning about it? And so everything would hit the gut. Well, one of the things that I was struggling with in coming to consciousness was not always just defaulting into old ideas and old behaviors. And so that would be, these things are like the epitome of the higher self and its glory, and the epitome of the lower self or the ego self in its worst state. So, if something comes into the gut and I don't push it up into consciousness, or in here it says your God self or your spirit self, this can be your consciousness, or where your higher self resides, or where that spark of the Holy Spirit lives in you in thought, where we're examining things. And so, we have to push things up, and that's difficult because you're going against gravity when you're doing it. You automatically want to default into the lower self and the old way of being. So this is what this little thing was that I got through meditation. And so coming to consciousness, we push things up in your awakening, and it's difficult. Like, you have to really think about things, and you have to really examine them, and not just go into default, which is where the ego self lives. There might be feelings of superiority or inferiority in the lower self or the ego self. You might have resistance to new ideas. There might be judgment against the self or against what's coming in, or selfishness or guilt, shame, worry, blame, confusion, and complication. When we complicate things, trying to get to fit the old mold that we're so accustomed to, instead of working through that fear and looking at things with an open mind and higher consciousness. The delegator to me is that gut feeling. It is where things are first felt, and it's where I decide, where am I going to send it? Now, this is in my personal life, that I use this, and I share with others in their personal life. There's a lot of times I got to get a gut intuition and then take a look at what's around me to see where it's going to go, in my body, and how I'm going to do it. So that's where the decider is right in the gut. And then, this is where we have our free will. We can do things the same old way and the easy way, which is to go with gravity and let it fall. Or we can work our muscles and put it up into the higher self, where, we see things with, there's a unified vision. We can practice forgiveness. We can, in that unity too, we can consider the highest good for all, not just ourselves. and it's where we're not selfish, or selfish if we need to be, or I don't want to say selfish, maybe, self-care. We take care of ourselves so we're not depleting ourselves. It's where we find our inspiration. And it's where we get clarity and clear thought when we're really examining things in a significant way. And then above that spirit self is the observer. And that's where I really try to get there when I need to detach from, like, the physical body. If I'm in physical pain, that's really difficult. Or if I'm in emotional pain, or I have an emotional idea about something, or I'm charged up emotionally, I try to recognize that I can feel right away in my gut to begin with. So I know when I'm feeling that, for example, I need to really push it up. So the interesting thing that I found is that practicing this, I've been able, I've watched people, and I too have been able to, instead of just defaulting, into old ways, it defaults into higher consciousness for the most part. I mean, we don't do it perfectly, right? But this has been something I've been able to grow with. A lot of times I feel like we're in consciousness. Christians will say, well, my will is God's will. This is that same kind of thing. When we're in that place, it's like, well, I'm walking hand in hand. My ego self is walking hand in hand with my higher self. And since my ego is aligned to that, it feels good. I never think we should annihilate our ego self. I think the second we don't need our ego is the second we're 6 feet under. It's part of the human experience, the human condition that we're here to experience. And so that is what I would use. And I would love to hear from others about how you experience your gut feeling and what you do with it, or where do you put it? What do you do? So who would like to start?
I will, since I will.
Awesome.
For me, I like what you've got here, Brenda. It's really interesting. I hadn't put it in anything into those kinds of categories before, but I've seen people that do like life coaching and that type of thing do something similar to this, but they call it something different, which I can't remember now what it is. But for me, a lot of it does come into the solar plex area for me. And when I get information, I don't really hear anything or see anything. It's just, I know it, So when I start questioning what I'm getting, I do go and get real quiet and pay attention to how does it feel there, in the gut. And if I've got like butterflies or, butterflies are a good sign for me, even that fear-based thing is a good thing too. So the gut's never wrong. And that's what I try to tell everybody too. It's like, if you're questioning things, you go, the ego, yeah, that's great. We all have that, but the gut is never wrong. The ego is wrong at times. The heart is wrong at times. The brain is wrong at times, but the gut 100% accurate if you listen to it and trust it. Like Pat was saying earlier, you just have to trust. So
awesome.
Michael, you had said earlier that you were going to have some interesting things to say about this because you have a different viewpoint, I guess.
Here it comes.
Well, it's interesting for me, more to a point. I'm going to walk through this just for a moment. Because I'm a male, and men readers are not there's not as many as females. Most men can't get in touch with both sides of a being, both masculine and feminine. And when they do, there's usually conflict or other portions like that. So when Brenda showed this to me, it took me a few minutes because my first reaction was, oh, hell no, that's not right. But again, coming from my side, as a guy, it's very different. Not only from physical anatomy, because it controls, if we were to talk about a root chakra from a female's perspective versus a male's perspective, a lot of similarities and yet a lot of sharp dissonance between the two. And when I looked at that, and I'm looking at her picture, and I'm looking at this infographic, and I'm like, okay, it does make sense in how she gets information. But again, it stopped and it reminded me that we all of us get our information in different fashion. For me, and I've had this conversation with Pat before, I can only call it the guys. It's a group of 5 men that sit more like at a semi-round table, and there's usually one person that'll talk, but I hear all of them, and they give information, they give me insights, and then the stereotypical, you get the pictures, you get the short movie clips, you get the emotion, you get the smells, the taste, sometimes stepping into things. But like you, it's always that gut feeling that is never wrong. And I tell people, look, when you have that first initial gut feeling, before you ad-lib and add things to it, that first gut feeling will never, ever steer you wrong. Right. And people will stop and ask me, okay, well, what about, I think about, okay, that's where there's a problem. And the way that things come across for me is that gut feeling. And then in between your gut and your head is your heart, more emotional. And then your brain. And I tell people the brain is a very wonderful, nasty animal, simply because its job is to do nothing but think. It can't process an emotion. The emotion lies in both the gut feeling and the heart. And they'll say, well, yeah, but I said, no, when you are in love, it resides in your heart. When you laugh, your whole body feels joy. The only time that your brain is going to feel something is if you laugh so much that you get a headache, but it will never feel that emotion. Right. So I had to stop and reconcile what I'm looking at from Brenda's point of view, and it does. So much of it marries up with the things that I do. But I had that stereotypical guy reaction going, oh, no, that's not going to work. No. Until I read through it, and I'm like, well, yeah, that actually makes sense. And because I don't work a lot with chakras, I understand them. I don't do a lot of work with them. It took me a minute to try to incorporate what I'm looking at and what I'm seeing, and then what I'm feeling from her piece to say, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that's very similar to what I do. But the initial reaction, like I said, was, I don't know. it was
right. And
this goes across everything. I mean, not just readers. Everybody has this ability to pay attention to your gut, So, because when I work with my clients or, talking to friends, family, whatever, I always take them to the gut. I mean, that's where I tell them, just go there. Not that I'm trying to get myself out of a job, but, that's your truth, is your gut.
Yeah, and when we are processing it too, when we go too much up into our head or too much this way or that way, we always have to go back to the gut. Mm-hmm. And that little thing that I got it's really about the beginnings of learning about your intuition as well. I don't, I do sometimes, if I'm confused, go through that, but mostly today it is, I trust the gut. Because I've done that exercise so many times that I trust the gut.
Yeah, you just have to listen to the gut. That's where I get messed up, because the head is great, but it's there to try to protect you. And it's like the parent who wants to hold their kids' legs while they go across the monkey bars, right?
Right.
So I just have to kind of shut my brain off, which is a challenge in itself.
Yes.
I like how you said that the brain just wants to protect you. Because that's the truth. That's what our brain is trying to do. So it really gets in the way of, manifesting and stuff when we are up in here. That fear, like you said, and I think that, the exercise that she shared was really good to just, I think the key is in awareness. because, and I loved again what you said, Brenda, about the ego. I mean, yeah, if the ego dies, like, no, that's not the goal. When we become aware, okay, where am I acting from? You know, what does it feel like? I remember being a kid and, you know, you just get that feeling like, oh, something's, or you just like, you see something, you're like, I'm going to drop that. And 30 seconds later, the cup is smashed on the floor, like that kind of gut feeling, like you knew that was going to happen, but you did it anyway. But for me, when I really became awakened to my abilities, my favorite thing, and it kind of still is, and I think you touched on it a little bit, Jamie, about truth, feeling that truth and feeling somebody else speak their truth. To me, it's just every hair on my body stands up. To me, that is a gut feeling, and that is, you know, a very intuitive thing to just be in tune. And when I'm going through, like, it's easy for me to trust now what comes through for other people. Like, it's just automatic. You just, like Pat said, you just let it come through. You're just a conduit. But in your own life, it's a little bit more difficult because our brain wants to protect us. Our heart is like, I'm open. And your brain's like, no, I'm going to block you from this because you're overthinking it. You know, so it's a very good thing to just be aware and breathe and say, what does this feel like when I think of doing this? Does every hair on my body stand up? Or maybe it's more subtle. Maybe it's still in the gut. And you're just like, what does it really feel like? Forget what the mind is telling you. Is it practical? Is it rational? Whatever. You know, even your heart, you have to soften it and open it. And then you can get to that gut and you're like, okay, what does it feel like in there? Does it make me squirm? Is it even like you said, Jamie, those butterflies that makes you like, oh, I'm really nervous, but yes, I really have to do this. It's just a really cool thing of just slowly learning to be aware. I guess I know you guys have been aware most of your life that you could do this. So for me, it's a little different. I know I was doing it my whole life, but I was not aware of it. So I hope that people watching tonight can really relate to just knowing what that gut feeling is when you get really confused and in your head. What does it feel like when you have that thought? And maybe it's not in your gut. Maybe I think people feel it differently too. You know, I mean, maybe you get a funny twinge in your neck or your shoulder when you're just like, don't do that. You know what I mean? Your body speaks in a lot of different ways. It's just being aware.
Excellent points. And that's what I mean by, wait, I got to go back to the gut. Where did that come from? You know, because we can now, after practicing it, and it doesn't take long, you know, when you start to practice it, it just, you almost miss the gut and it just goes straight to like that truth or that knowledge, you know, and just bam, you're there. Yeah. That's awesome. What have you got, Pat?
Well, for me, sometimes, especially, I tell Spirit, okay, I need to know this for me. Make it clear, concise, complete, and then give me confirmation, especially if I'm arguing with myself, which not that we would ever do that, you understand? And then I'll pretend that I'm my best friend in the same situation, because now I can look at it with no emotion. If I'm looking at it for myself, I can get caught up in the, you know, like when you really want to buy something, you know, you shouldn't have it, and you go, is this a want or is this a need? You know, and that's what I try to do with myself. Then I'll go, okay, is this what's best for me, or am I doing this because I think it's better for someone else? Most of the time, I just go with the gut feeling, but every once in a while, I will get into a real argument with myself, and I just won't give it up. It's like, but I want it. And it's like, well, you know. Then I start to clear, concise, complete, and then Spirit, somehow you'll see a magazine title or something will be said on a TV program, and there's my answer. And it usually following my gut.
That's awesome. I love your 3 C's, Pat. Clear, concise, complete.
Yeah.
Is that right? 3 C's?
Yeah, and
confirmation.
Because, you know, the same keeps coming up over and over, and like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Is this mine? And they go, no, and they give you a name. So that's when I call my friends. I go, I had the craziest dream about you the other night. And I tell them because it's usually something they're struggling with. They don't, they know what they should do. They just don't want to go there.
Yep. Yep. I do the dream thing too. Yeah. It's a good way to open up conversation. Really nice.
If either of you ever tell me that you had a dream about me, I need to listen, right?
Yeah.
And it's a nice third-party influence.
Code word.
Right. And it's a nice third-party thing. It's not coming from us. They're not going to argue. If you tell me you had a dream, it was a dream. Let's argue about.
Yeah.
If you say, I think, I feel, well, why do you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a really awesome tool right there, because then you don't have to say, well, why do you think that? That's like seriously proactive. That's great.
She's got good tricks of the trade. I really like even in the grocery store, your little slick little cover up. Oh, I thought you were. I like that.
Oh, so does Spirit give you those thoughts real quick, Pat?
Usually yes. Because I just go, okay, guys, or I'll use my pendulum and go balance my chakras, and then I'll pretend I'm reading for someone. And again, it's to take myself out of it. Yeah, because we can talk ourselves out of.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and that is the point in that keep it simple self is getting in the observer position. That's exactly what that is. And that's a real critical component, I think, to following intuition at all, is to get out of ourselves, take us out of the equation, and it's almost like you raise above it. But I don't mean that in raise above it, be better than it all. Nothing like that. I just mean get above it for a bird's eye view, so that you can take a look at it without all your emotion and all your ideas and all your judgments and all your, all of that stuff. I have to tell myself that all the time. Get out of it, get into, observe it. Don't feel it in that empathic way, but not in that personal way. That's what that piece is. Yeah. So important. Okay, Mike, you look like you're deep in thought. What's going on over there?
It's at times amazing. We all do similar things, and yet the way that we get that information can be so dramatically different. But it is how we have individually grown into what we do. It makes me sit and think, this is kind of, and like everybody else in this group, it is an amazing thing to be able to work with other professional people that are in the same field, that get it, so to speak. It's that parenthetical that when you go out in public, it's just like people that are in astrology. When they start speaking more in astrological terms, my eyes glaze over. I want to drop into a deep coma or something like that, But we sit here, and even though we're all using different verbiage or different means, we're all talking about the same thing. It's just how did we best relate to it when we were younger, or when the time came that we started working with it, and how has it grown, manifested, and changed not only in our perception, but how it altered our lives as we went through this process of growing into who we are. That's what I'm just sitting here thinking and going, this is an amazing kind of thing to be able to relate it and see it to all of you.
Huh. Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of this diverse group, because we all have, I think Pat said it really nicely a couple of weeks ago. How did you say that, Pat? Something about we may not we may not all see eye to eye, but we all have the same goal or something like that. I don't know how you put that, but it was really awesome. Like, we're a diverse group. We're not all the same. We're very different, you know, the way we put things together.
We're all cut from the same cloth. We just happen to be different colors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In tech, because we're basically the same underneath. Our belief system is our foundation, and we all have a strong belief system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And some of and our, I think, and one of the things that is interesting about the gut, and I think why I steered away from it too, and y'all can comment on this, please, but part of it, when I would start listening to my gut, it went against those old ideals. That, and we touched on that a little bit, but it went against the old ideals that I had in my mind, and so I could not. I had to grow past that. There is one of my favorite books. It still is my handbook. Is the Sermon on the Mount, and it says, "Don't take oaths. Swear not." Means don't take oaths in that book, and that's from the Beatitudes in Matthew. And man, I that was so helpful for me, so that I could, you know, so that I could, because if you take oaths and you promise you're only going to be this way and always this way and it's always good, you know, you get stunted, and then you can't feel the gut. You just can't even feel it, because as soon as you feel it, you dismiss it, right? Mm-hmm. Have to grow past, have to let the spirit grow, spirit in ourselves, you know, got to let it out. Open up.
See, that's one of the things when I looked at your graphic that you had made, that it took me a moment, well, it took me a few minutes when I was looking at it to look at the difference where you had delineated more of a lower self to say ego, you know, because I've never personally broken it down in that kind of a way. And that's why I looked at it and I'm like, you know, him-hawing about it. But as I was looking at it and as you were talking about it, it really does make sense in how you're saying at different levels in the body as to what we do.
Right.
Yeah.
Wayne Dyer always said, ego is edging God out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's just like, and Brenda, when you were talking, it's those old tapes play in our head, what we were taught in childhood. And, you know, and it's just, we were taught that this was this and that was that, and there's nothing in between. And then we start growing up and it's like, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you take that chance with the gut feeling though, too, it's like, once you take that chance, sometimes it's just like this real amazing feeling, like your whole body tingles, because it's just like you feel this excitement, you feel this clarity, and like, yep, this is it. And you do your best not to listen to everybody around you saying you're crazy. Mm-hmm. Jumping, you know what I mean? It's kind of like you got to jump off that cliff, because you're going to live, you're going to survive, and it's going to be an exciting trip over there. But yeah, when I've paid attention and shut down those tapes when I can, sometimes that's magic right there. That is magic to me.
I've got a question for the group. Did you ever find or think of, when you listened to your gut feeling, that initial intuitive, as it was growing, did you find kind of like a do the right thing, get a reward happen in your life? But just like that feeling that you know that it's right. But did you find as you went along that the more that you paid attention and the more that you stayed on the path, so to speak, that certain things would start to happen in your life, or better things would happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because you were attracting it, because you were open to allowing more to come in that way, instead of blocking it with your brain or your heart. Yeah, I definitely have had that. But then I also had those moments where I shut that all off, because, you know, we're human. I get scared and I shut down and listen to the brain way too often sometimes for myself.
Mm-hmm. But
not for other people.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say I'm good for other people. Not so good for me. I'm still working on that.
But see, that's why you say, what would I tell my best friend? What would I tell my best friend if she were in this same situation? I won't lie to her. I'll lie to myself till the cows come home.
Yep.
And for me, it was that freedom. Like I didn't have to stay with the blinders on. I didn't have to stay with everybody else's attitudes. It was okay to have a thought of my own, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I started noticing a lot of miracles and magic after my awakening and my awareness. And like Jamie said, that feeling, I mean, it is euphoria. It is, you're like, oh my gosh, this is it. I am lit up. This is exactly it. And you know it, and it feels so good. But I found that living that kind of life of awareness, as you follow those things, there's going to be a lot that falls away. And there's going to be a lot of upheavals, so to speak. My life just completely flipped upside down. And there was so many like little miracles and magic. It didn't feel like I didn't feel bad about it. I mean, it was a process. I honored the process. I cried when I needed to cry, and whatever. It's a long story, but it's really it's both, and it's about balance. I mean, you follow that little gut, and you're like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. I know it. I feel it. Okay, I'm being told to do this. Okay, but if I do this, these other things are going to fall away. But I have to do this because this is the right thing. So I think that, I mean, again, it's just a process and balancing and growing through it. And like Brenda said, that's a good time to really feel it in the gut. We get, I mean, even as readers and people who are aware and we do this, it's a part of our everyday life. There are moments in my own life that I have to just sit down, ground myself, and breathe and say, okay, here's this choice. Breathe, and I will just try to clear my head, and I'll say, okay, what does this feel like? And it's often in my gut that I have to concentrate, because normally it's automatic. It just is. But when it gets all clouded by our beautiful minds and other things, you have to separate that and say, okay, what is this? Does it feel? And when here's this other option, and focus on that. And how does that feel? And that's, for me, a pretty good way to make decisions. Because like you guys all confirmed, the gut does not lie.
True that, sister. It does not lie. And I feel, I don't know, that it's hard for me to think about rewards. I've identified that magical feeling with you, Heather, so many times. It is so much fun to watch you, because you are just, your world is in Technicolor. And, I experienced that too. I mean, there were times I'd be driving, down the road in my car, and I swear Jesus was flying by me sideways and waving at me. Like when I read The Disappearance of the Universe, man, that woke me up. And, but then when I read Sermon on the Mount, which is my handbook that I read before that, I wasn't thinking about rewards. I was thinking, how am I going to do this? I don't know if I can get through it. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this. This is so hard. What do you mean, offer it mental non-resistance? What are you talking about? And that's the law of attraction, but how am I going to do this? I thought this is a narrow road. How is there going to be freedom in this? And so, but I was really, really rigid when I started mine. And that is that religious Catholic upbringing. There is a faithfulness to that. And there is a way, you go at it. And that's what I did. I mean, I had no wiggle room for myself. It took me a while to really experience that magical feeling. Or those sort of rewards. And sometimes it's like I have to backtrack. I have to go back to basics. That's what I love about connecting with you all, is that you make it magic for me, because you remind me of things that I just have taken for granted or forgotten about. And it's like, man, I need to pull that out, and have a little more fun with this, and be a little more relaxed. Yeah.
I call it blooming when I see someone like Heather Lynn and see her coming outside,
Yes.
flipping the blinders back just a little bit. Oh, okay, this is no. And then, oh well, maybe that wasn't so bad. I call it opening a lotus, because it's cool, because they just, it's like, wow, well, I've been trying to tell you this for years. Why you do it? "Oh, that was you. That's okay, but it's not okay for me." And it's just fun to watch.
Yeah.
The blue. Oh yeah.
It's a beautiful process. It's funny you said lotus flower, because that is going to be part of my logo, my business logo, and I'm going to get a tattoo, and that's exactly what I've been. It's just, what do you call it? Confirmation.
Yep. Yeah. And doesn't that scare you sometimes?
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's magic. I mean, that is the magic in it. It's just every little thing that you take note of, and you're like, oh, thank you. Gratitude, like we all talked about.
And you don't even know what's happening until you go, oh my gosh, when did this happen? Oh, yeah. If you just allow, just trust, if you want me to do this, then you show me how I'm going to get there.
Yep.
It reminds me very much of a time that Pat and I were working at a fair. And during the break time, I walked over to her, and I don't really remember what the conversation was about, but I had thought about something, and it kind of opened my eyes, and I went over and I looked at her and I talked to Pat, and she listened, and polite as ever, and the response I got was, well, duh. I just started laughing. I'm like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be.
Confirmation.
But it's with such love that it's expected. I feel like even when you get, feisty, you can feel your heart, and people know that.
But see, I'm from West Virginia, and we're always told you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, darling.
You should really hear her. You should really hear her in person sometime. Oh my God. No holds barred conversation goes everywhere.
You're going to make them think
That's
I'm
awesome.
crazy or something,
What's that, Pat?
I said you may make them think I'm crazy or something, which I am.
Oh, no. No. It's just, for me, and you and I have had this discussion many times, because you are more the old school reader, or grew up in doing things. You do seances, you do table tipping. There are things that you do that I still want to learn that a lot of readers today don't know, or don't know how. It's knowledge that is passing out of the world. So your viewpoint and mine, while they are similar, sometimes, like I said, they just have that delineated, crystal sharp difference. So when you're sitting and talking, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And I mean this politely. Again, it's learning from your elders that just blows my mind in some of our conversations we have, because you have a knack of being able to simplify such a complex thought into a very, very short, meaningful message.
But see, you all do it too. You just don't do it the way I do it. And I guess that's because of most of my relatives being family, farmers and whatnot, being very simple life. I grew up in the city, but all my relatives were farmers. I spent the weekends with them. And it's just that I say stuff and do stuff that I'm not even aware of, because it's just me. It's just, it's just in there.
I would agree, because working in, beans, and her name escaped me, Donna Bretz had her shop up in Sandusky, Midnight Moon. Mm-hmm. And working with you in that shop, I'm in one room, you're in another. We're both reading during the weekend. But at times when I wasn't busy, I was able to hear some of the things that were going on, or listen, more importantly, to the clients that would come out, and I would chat with them for a minute. And they would tell me some of the things that you had done, and I'm like, you don't see that anymore. It's really, really a rare kind of thing.
I care about the people I read for, and even as a realtor and even taking care of my adoptive mom, my husband used to say, "How can you do that?" And I said, "I gotta get up in the morning and look at that mirror. No, I did everything I possibly could to the best. And that's the way it is. Love me, hate me, respect me. That's all I ask, And I think we all work by that thing. Yeah. Honesty is a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I have to say, Pat, it was really, really fun getting to know you a lot better tonight. I love this conversation on the gut feeling and the intuition and the magic that comes from it. And speaking of magic, next week we will be here at 8 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm in Central now. Where are we from? Ohio, North Carolina, and Texas. And I'm in Texas. Everybody else is in the same
Heather's in
time
Michigan.
Zone. Heather's in Michigan?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, Michigan. I thought you were in Ohio. Okay. So, at any rate.
It's like automatic vehemence.
About Ohio is ew.
Hey, I'm originally from Ohio. I was born and raised there.
I was born in Michigan, just outside of Detroit, back in '68. But I'm a transplant.
I remember that about you.
I'm a transplant to Ohio, so I catch all the grief when Michigan and Ohio State play. Mm-hmm. I get a lot of grief because I'm sitting here with a big M for Michigan, and they're like,
"Go away." Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, so next week we will be talking about magic, and this is the things, the manifestation and the magical stuff that comes from awakening, and the fun that comes along with it. And we are going to have Heather hosting next week. So, and nobody is in the hot seat. Nobody. We've all been through the hot seat. What'd you say?
You look surprised when you said she was hosting. She's like, oh.
No, I just didn't know I was hosting the magic show, because it makes me really excited, because it's one of my favorite topics. I talk about it
and Heather, that's why you're hosting it. Because that is your thing. So we're looking forward to it. And thanks everybody, to all the panel members. It was a great show tonight. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too. And to our viewers, we hope you had fun. And we will see you next week, as we are here every Wednesday night live. Yes, live. It's a little scary, but we are live every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. We'll see you next week.
Bye.